My name is Clara, I'm 31, and after saving every paycheck for 9 years, I finally bought my bungalow. The first night I stood on that porch proud and shaking with relief, two cars screeched into my driveway. My parents and my brother's family spilled out hauling suitcases like it was already theirs. When they screamed, "Where do we sleep?" I said coldly, "You won't. Not here." But what they didn't know was that I already had proof that would tear apart everything they thought they controlled. Before I dive into the details of how it all unfolded, make sure to share, and subscribe so you don't miss the rest of this story. I didn't become the family outcast overnight. It happened in small scenes repeated so often they carved scars I carried without realizing. The kitchen was where it began. Our house smelled of bleach and overcooked meat. I'd set the table lining up forks straight while Victor dropped his baseball bag onto a chair. My mother's eyes lit up when he bragged about a game-winning hit. She refilled his glass before I could even ask for water. When I mentioned I'd gotten an A on my geometry exam, she nodded absently, already fussing over his jersey. I learned to tuck my pride behind clenched teeth. Back then I thought silence was safety. Graduation day proved me wrong. I stood in my robe, polyester sticking to my neck under the June sun. I scanned the bleachers searching for familiar faces. None. My family was across town sitting in a hotel ballroom where Victor was pitching his startup idea to investors. I tried to hold my diploma like a shield against the emptiness of that field. Later, when I showed them the certificate, my father muttered, "Good job, kiddo," without looking up from Victor's failed business plan. That night, I stared at the ceiling, whispering to myself, "Next time, they'll see me." But they never did. College was worse. One spring morning, I opened my tuition account empty, my chest hollowed. I called home, voice shaking. Mom's tone was casual, as if she were talking about grocery money. We had to help Victor with his coffee shop. "You'll figure it out, Clara. You always do." That sentence drilled into me like a verdict. I picked up 2 jobs day shifts at the bookstore, night shifts, at a diner where the smell of grease clung to my hair. Oatmeal became dinner. I carried exhaustion like a second backpack, but I swallowed it because speaking up meant being labeled ungrateful. There was a smaller betrayal I never forgot. I found a store credit card in my name charges I didn't make. When I asked Mom, she smiled, almost sweet. "Just a quick thing for groceries, dear. You'll benefit too." I signed the slip of paper she handed me, my stomach burning, but I didn't push. I told myself keeping peace was more important than conflict. Each compromise built a cage I didn't notice until years later. Work became my only refuge. At the architecture firm, I could measure progress in concrete terms, floor plans, deadlines, met bonuses earned. My first big project, a downtown lobby, nearly broke me. I spent nights hunched over blueprints, my eyes gritty, fingers stained with ink. When the award came, a framed certificate and a handshake from the director, I wanted to share it with my family. At Sunday dinner, I mentioned it, heart-pounding. My father cut me off to announce Victor's latest idea, some app he hadn't coded a line for. The table buzzed with questions for him. My award lay forgotten in the trunk of my car for weeks. Sunday dinners became rituals of erasure. Roast chicken, the smell of lemon polish on the dining table, Victor holding court with stories about business schemes. I'd bring dessert hoping someone would notice the effort. No one did. I learned to smile while carving meat I hadn't eaten yet. I'd say work's going well, but my voice always faded under their laughter. Each dinner ended with me carrying dishes to the sink sleeves, damp with suds, while Victor stretched on the couch, Mom stroking his hair like he was still 10. Naomi entered my life around then. She was a lawyer, sharp-eyed with a laugh that cut through my fog. We met at a tenant rights workshop where I volunteered to sketch designs for low-income housing. She asked why I flinched whenever my phone buzzed with Mom. I brushed it off. She didn't push, but her gaze told me she saw more than I wanted to reveal. Slowly, she became the person I could tell the truth to, even if only in fragments. By the time I turned 30, I had saved 65% of every paycheck for nearly a decade. No vacations, no impulse shopping, no luxury. Just plain meals, a secondhand car, and endless spreadsheets tracking interest. My coworkers teased me for being boring. I smiled, knowing boredom was building me a way out. The first time I walked into the bungalow, it smelled faintly of fresh paint and sawdust. Sunlight streamed through dusty blinds, hitting the wood floor, where one board squeaked near the window. It wasn't big. Just 2 bedrooms, a narrow kitchen, and a patch of yard. But when the realtor slid the papers across the table, my hands trembled. I signed, thinking maybe this time the silence would finally belong to me. If I had known what waited 3 weeks later, the screech of tires in my driveway, the sight of suitcases hitting the ground, I might have hesitated. But back then, all I felt was relief. Relief and a fragile hope that the house meant freedom. I didn't realize yet that freedom would have to be fought for line by line, proof by proof. The first crack in my relief came the night I moved in. Boxes lined the living room, tape still dangling when headlights carved across my blinds. Tires screeched into my driveway. I froze, heart kicking against my ribs. The front door rattled before I even reached it. Mom's voice floated in, falsely cheerful. "We're here. Finally, a place big enough for all of us." Behind her, Victor dragged in a suitcase, his wife juggling bags, their kids yawning. The air smelled like exhaust and fried food from the takeout cups they carried. I clutched my keys so tight the edges bit my palm. "This is my house," I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Victor smirked, dropping his luggage on my still-wrapped rug. "You're single. 2 bedrooms is a waste. We'll make it work." They shouted over one another, where would the kids sleep, where to put their boxes. My throat burned. Finally, I snapped. "You won't. Not here." The words cut the room sharp as broken glass. Silence fell for half a second. Then Mom's eyes narrowed, her smile curdling. They left that night, slamming doors, but silence from them never meant peace. It meant plotting. 3 mornings later, my inbox pinged with a subject line that made my stomach lurch. "Jensen Family Dream Home Purchase Agreement Ready." I almost deleted it, assuming it was spam, until I saw my name in bold letters. Primary applicant Clara Jensen. I clicked. Pages of a mortgage I never applied for filled the screen. Loan amount $978,000. My signature copied and pasted onto every page. My account already debited $2,000 as earnest money. My chest squeezed so tight I thought I'd pass out. Hands shaking, I printed the email. Black ink bled slightly on cheap paper, but it felt like holding a weapon. Every page screamed betrayal. At the bottom, filed by Marianne Jensen on behalf of Clara Jensen, my own mother. The doorbell rang as the paper still spit from the printer. I opened the door to find them, Mom, Dad, and Victor, standing like an army. Dad checked his watch, irritated. Victor strolled in, glancing at my boxes as if measuring space for his furniture. Mom rifled through my unopened mail like it was hers. "You look tired," she said, dismissive. I held up the printouts. "You forged my name." She didn't flinch. "Don't be dramatic, Clara. I simply initiated the process. You'd have been consulted before anything finalized." "Consulted?" My throat felt raw. "You stole from me." Victor's voice was low, mocking, strong words for family helping family. Dad finally spoke. "It's an investment. Schools are excellent. We've already enrolled the kids." The words hit like bricks. They had ended their lease, quit jobs, all on the assumption I'd bankroll their future. I tasted metal like blood, even though I hadn't bitten my lip. Mom's eyes filled with crocodile tears. "If your credit drops, ours will too. We'll never qualify for anything decent. Don't destroy us." My hands shook as I slid the papers into a folder. Not this time. Not silently. That night I sat on the floor, surrounded by boxes and betrayal. The glow of my laptop lit the room. I pulled footage from the security camera above my front door. The screen flickered, showing Marianne sliding my spare key into her purse days earlier. My pulse thudded. Proof. Next, I logged into my bank. The debit line glared back at me, time-stamped and real. I printed the statement, slipping it into the same folder. By midnight, I had 3 pieces of evidence: the forged mortgage, the bank debit, and the video still. My folder grew heavier like armor, but even as I stacked the pages neatly, one thought gnawed at me: this wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. And I would need more than paper to fight them. The next morning, I called Naomi. She listened in silence as I read the subject line of the forged mortgage email. I expected her to gasp or curse. Instead, her voice was calm, razor sharp. Don't confront them yet. Gather. Document. Every detail. If you push too soon, they'll spin it against you. Her steadiness steadied me. So I gathered. I started with Victor's Facebook post. He'd written a sanctimonious essay about sacrifice, framing himself as a father, abandoned by his selfish sister. Comments flooded in: family comes first. How could Clara do this? I took screenshots of every line, the timestamp glowing like a neon wound. At lunch, I stopped by the copy shop on Main Street. The clerk remembered Mom, sweet lady, very insistent, asking to scan and print ID pages. He slid a security still across the counter, grainy but unmistakable, my mother handing over my driver's license. I paid for the copy and tucked it into the folder, my pulse a steady drum. That night, Naomi came over with takeout. We spread the papers across my coffee table like puzzle pieces: the forged loan, the bank debit, the camera footage, the Facebook screenshots, the copy shop still. Chain of custody matters, she said, sliding each into a labeled envelope. No one can accuse you of tampering if we're precise. I watched her hands move with methodical grace. My own hands still shook, but less than before. 2 days later, Mr. Whitmore, my elderly neighbor, knocked on my door. He leaned on his cane, his eyes sharp. Saw your brother and his wife coming and going while you were at work, he said. Didn't feel right. Figured you might need someone to back you up. His words carried the weight of quiet decency. I asked if he'd be willing to write a statement. He nodded, steady as a church bell. Piece by piece, the pile of proof grew heavier, and with it, my fear shifted into something colder, steadier. Not rage, resolve. Mom still left voicemails, her tone syrupy and guilt-laced. Don't embarrass us. Think of the children. You'll ruin the family. Each time I saved the recording before deleting it from my phone. Evidence. At work, I buried myself in drafting projects, but my mind kept circling back to the folder hidden in my closet. Every click of the copier at the office reminded me of the forged signatures waiting inside. Naomi called one evening. You're ready for the next step, she said. But timing matters. You want them confident, careless. Let them think you've backed down. I stared at the folder, at the neat envelopes, at the stack of proof that finally outweighed my silence. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. I felt dangerous. I whispered to myself, not yet, but soon. Naomi became my anchor. When I showed her the mortgage printouts, she didn't look shocked the way I expected. Her brows pulled tight, but her voice was steady. Good. This means they've overplayed their hand. Now we collect. Collect. The word steadied me. I started small. Victor's Facebook rant was still up. He called me greedy, accused me of turning my back on 2 innocent kids. The comments were brutal: relatives, neighbors, even church friends piling on. I sat in the dark, the glow of the screen painting my hands blue as I scrolled. My stomach clenched, but I clicked screenshot again and again until every comment, every timestamp was saved. Next came the copy shop. I walked in with my pulse pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The clerk recognized the name instantly. Your mom was in here last week. Needed quick scans. Real insistent. He tapped a few keys and turned the screen toward me. A grainy, still image, Marianne leaning over the counter, my driver's license in her hand. My throat went dry. I asked for a certified copy, and when he slid the print across the counter, I tucked it into my folder like a blade. Back home, Naomi spread everything across my dining table: mortgage forms, bank debits, screenshots, now the photo from the copy shop. Her nails clicked against each envelope as she labeled them. Chain of custody, she reminded me. We keep it clean, or they'll scream forgery. Her precision calmed me. For once, I wasn't drowning alone, but proof kept finding me. Mr. Whitmore, my neighbor with a cane and sharp memory, stopped me at the mailboxes. Saw your brother carrying boxes inside while you were at work, he said. Didn't sit right. If you need me to say something official, I will. His voice carried no drama, just quiet certainty. It hit me harder than any document. I thanked him, fighting the sting in my eyes. Even my phone became a weapon. Mom's voicemails dripped with guilt. Clara, please don't make a scene. Think of your reputation. Think of the family name. Each time I hit save, another file, another cut in the paper trail of betrayal. I kept the folder in my closet tucked beneath winter coats. Each night after work, I'd slide it out. Add one more piece, feel the weight increase. The paper smelled faintly of ink and dust, and sometimes I pressed my palms flat against it, the way a soldier might rest a hand on armor. For years, my silence had been the only proof of my loyalty. Now the silence was broken, replaced by documentation. One night, Naomi asked, "Do you feel ready?" I stared at the folder. Inside lay their lies, their theft, their arrogance. My fear had curdled into something colder. Not fury strategy. Not yet, I said quietly, sliding the folder back into its hiding place. But soon. Very soon. The folder wasn't enough. Proof was power, but power without timing could backfire. Naomi reminded me of that every time I paced her office. You need them comfortable, overconfident. That's when they'll least expect the ground to disappear under their feet. So I planned. I chose the setting: first Sunday dinner. It was always their ritual, their stage. I invited them with a clipped text. Let's celebrate my move. Bring everyone. The hook was bait, sweet enough to mask the steel underneath. Next, I rehearsed. I spread papers across my kitchen table, slid the photos into clear sleeves, labeled each envelope in Naomi's neat handwriting. I practiced sliding them out one by one, not in anger, but with precision. The smell of printer ink filled the apartment, sharp and chemical, clinging to my fingers. Props mattered. Naomi insisted on backups. One USB sealed in a red envelope tucked into my blazer pocket. A second copy zipped on her cloud account. If Victor lunged for the folder, if Mom tried to shred or snatch, I would still have the truth. Allies were arranged too. Mr. Whitmore agreed to stop by midway, cane tapping like a gavel, his statement folded in his pocket. The building manager let me reserve the community room neutral ground. Bright fluorescent lights, no way for them to twist it into my private ambush. I even planned my body. Where I'd sit center of the table, back straight, folder within reach. Where Naomi would stand quiet but watchful, ready to confirm timestamps if they dared cry fabrication. The projector sat against the far wall, cables coiled like waiting snakes. The hardest part was keeping my voice steady. I practiced lines in the mirror, jaw tight, words cold. Not screaming, not pleading. This is mine. You took. And now everyone will see. The reflection of my own eyes startled me. For the first time, they looked less like prey and more like steel. The night before, I couldn't sleep. I walked the apartment, barefoot, floorboards creaking beneath me. I paused by the window where the board squeaked. Once, that sound annoyed me. Now it grounded me, a reminder this place was mine, squeaks and all. On the table, the red envelope glowed faintly in the lamplight. I brushed my fingertips over it. A talisman. A fuse. I whispered to the empty room. Tomorrow, no more silence. And for the first time, I believed myself. The community room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old carpet. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, buzzing like nervous insects. I set the table with plastic plates and paper napkins, the kind of low-effort spread my family wouldn't question. They'd think it meant I was eager to please. Let them. One by one they filed in. Mom in her pastel sweater eyes already scanning the corners like she owned the place. Dad trailing behind, arms folded. Victor barging in, loud, kids trailing his wife juggling juice boxes. The sound of them filled the room, swallowing air that belonged to me. "Looks nice," Clara Mom said, placing a grocery bag on the counter as if she were hostess. Finally thinking bigger. I smiled tight. Something like that. We sat. Plastic forks clinked against paper plates. Small talk ricocheted, traffic sports the price of gas. My heart kept time with the hum of the lights. Naomi slipped in quietly, setting her bag on a chair. Mom glanced at her, frowning, but said nothing. When the noise reached its peak, I stood. My palms pressed flat on the table. The chatter stuttered out. "I want to thank you all for coming," I said, my voice even. "But this isn't about dinner." Victor smirked. Finally, she admits it. Big speech time. I pulled the first envelope from my blazer, the red one. Set it in the center of the table. "This is about truth." Mom's eyes flicked to it, wary. Dad sighed, already impatient. I slid out the first sheet, the forged mortgage, my signature scrawled across pages I never touched. Gasps from Victor's wife. This, I said, was filed under my name. Without my consent. Mom leaned back, voice syrupy. "Clara, stop." It was a formality. Families help each other. Formality, I cut in, laying down the bank statement. $2,000 already pulled. My account. My money. Victor barked a laugh. $2,000. You act like that's life-changing. Naomi spoke calm and crisp. Fraud is fraud, Victor. Amount doesn't matter. The room shifted. Chairs creaked, forks stilled. I pulled out the next proof, a grainy still from the copy shop camera. Marianne leaning over the counter, my license in her hand. Gasps again. "Recognize yourself?" I asked. Her lips parted. Tears shimmered, instantly conjured like a trick. I was helping. Always helping. "You twist everything." I dropped the final piece, screenshots of Victor's post. The glowing words labeling me selfish, cruel. The comments from cousins, uncles, even Grandma Elise, all parroting the lie. I let the silence throb as they stared at the screen. Naomi angled toward them. "Helping," I said quietly. "This is what helping looks like." Victor shoved his chair back, plastic legs screeching. "You think you're better than us? You wouldn't even have this house without Dad co-signing." "Wrong." I cut him off. My voice was ice. 9 years of saving, 65% of every paycheck, every vacation skipped, every late night at the firm. That's how I bought it. Not with your failures, not with her lies. Dad finally spoke, low, cold. "Enough drama. Sign the papers, Clara. Keep this starter box and let us have something better. Everyone wins. Everyone but me." I slid one last envelope across the table. Naomi opened it, laying down Mr. Whitmore's statement, signed and dated. The room went quiet again. Proof, stacked like bricks. Mom's face crumpled. Victor's fists clenched. Dad stared at the ceiling as if distance could erase the evidence in front of him. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the spare key they had stolen. Set it gently on the table. The metallic clink echoed louder than any shout. "You don't get to define my success," I said. "You don't get to steal what I earned. This ends here." Victor leaned forward, rage twisting his face. "If you walk away, you'll be alone. That's what you want." "No family," I met his eyes. "Alone feels a lot like freedom." Naomi's voice cut the air. "Everything here is documented, time-stamped, and secured. Any attempt to pursue Clara's credit further will be met with criminal charges." The words landed heavier than my own. Legal steel beneath emotional wounds. Silence. The fluorescent hum seemed louder, almost mocking. One by one they stood, Dad first muttering, Victor storming, dragging his wife and kids. Mom lingered, eyes wet, whispering, "Please, Clara, don't do this." I held her gaze. "I love you, but love isn't ownership. The answer is no." She left shoulders sagging, footsteps echoing down the hallway. When the door shut behind them, the room seemed to exhale. Naomi touched the red envelope, sliding it back to me. My hands no longer shook. For the first time in years, silence felt like safety. The fallout came faster than I expected. By Monday morning, Naomi confirmed the forged mortgage application had been flagged and voided. The lender returned the withdrawn funds, and my account balance finally looked whole again. I changed every password I had, froze my credit, and filed an official fraud alert. For once, I wasn't scrambling to fix their mistakes. I was protecting myself on my own terms. Victor tried to save face online. He deleted his Facebook rant, then posted vague lines about false accusations and loyalty tests. But people remembered. Screenshots floated around. Even his friends began to question. Within weeks, his family moved into a cramped rental across town, 2 bedrooms for 4 people. The man who once mocked me for settling was now living smaller than I ever had. Mom's calls came in bursts. First pleading, then furious, then pleading again. I let them go to voicemail. Each message sounded like a script she'd memorized. Think of the children. Think of your father's health. Don't throw away everything we've built. I saved them, but I didn't reply. My silence was my answer. At work, I kept my head down. No gossip, no explanations, just drawings, site visits, deadlines. It felt good to have a world where my name wasn't dragged through mud. My coworkers teased me for staying late, but for the first time it wasn't to escape. It was because I wanted to be there. Boundaries became more than words. I met with Naomi one last time and drafted a simple statement. All future communication must come through my attorney. Any financial requests will be denied. Access to my property is permanently revoked. It wasn't emotional, it was factual. Legal steel to protect the soft places I'd spent too long exposing. I taped a copy of the statement inside my front closet right above the folder of evidence. Not because I expected to use it again, but because I wanted a reminder. A line in ink, a wall that would not crumble. For years, I thought love meant saying yes. Now I knew the truth. Sometimes the most loving word you can offer to yourself is no. When I closed my door at night, the silence pressed close, but it no longer felt suffocating. It felt earned. 3 months later, the apartment finally felt like mine. Morning light spilled across the drafting table where new sketches lay, and the squeaky board by the window no longer annoyed me, it grounded me. On the shelf sat the red envelope, now empty, repurposed to hold design samples instead of evidence. Proof had turned into possibility. I still heard from Mom occasionally. Shorter messages, less venom, more hesitation. Maybe someday there'd be space for rebuilding. But only on honest ground, not stolen credit. When I watered the little plant my neighbor gave me, I realized peace didn't mean silence. It meant choice. If you've ever had to draw that line between love and control, you know the weight. What would you have done differently? Share your thoughts and subscribe so you don't miss the next story.